We're going to be doing chapter 55 to 60 today. So if it makes you feel a little bit better, that's 60% of the way through the chapters. So we're nearly done. Okay, chapter 55, Pi wakes up and he thinks about the plans that he had orchestrated in order to get rid of Richard Parker. And then he goes, oh yeah, I remember that plan 6 was the plan I had to go through, but what is plan 6? I can't remember. And then he remembers, oh, plan 6 was to outlive Richard Parker. And then he realizes he can't beat Richard Parker. It's him or it's Richard Parker. And he goes, so he's going to have to do something about it. Then chapter 56, he talks about how only fear can defeat life. And he says, like, if you choose fear as your companion in life, you'll never be able to get things done in essence, because you'll always be like, oh, but I'm afraid of what happens if this happens, and you just won't go on to live because you'll be so afraid. And then chapter 57, he says it's kind of ironic how Richard Parker, the guy or the animal that scared him witless, was the same animal that brought him peace, purpose, and wholeness. Now, he brings him wholeness and purpose and peace because, he has to look after Richard Parker. It brings him peace, I think, just to look after him, and wholeness as well. So in looking after Richard Parker and having someone there or something there or an animal there with him, he doesn't feel so alone. Okay, then he talks about the way Richard Parker is like sitting, and he says he looks so much like a cat, the way he's like lying down, or when he looks at him, he just looks so much like a cat. And then he talks about how he's heard all tigers make all different sounds except for Preston, which is like an indication of friendly and harmless intentions. And then he says he needs to tame him because essentially they're in the same boat, which is both literally and figuratively. They're both in the same boat, and figuratively they're both in the same situation. And then you notice that there's a whistle that Pi takes, and then when he sees this whistle, he says, okay, new plan number 7 is to keep Richard Parker alive. Then chapter 58 is just him going through the survival manual, and it basically says make sure you occupy your mind. The foot is the only good judge of land, so if you think you see land, the only way to properly know is to put your foot on it. Then there's a mention of turtles, like how eating turtles can help you live. Okay, then he says you mustn't let your moral flag. So basically, don't let yourself get down, otherwise you won't survive. Then there's a thing that says you mustn't drink wee, and then Pa says they're actually quite stupid for saying that I mustn't drink wee, or they didn't have to tell me that, because after being called pissing my whole life in childhood, I wouldn't be caught dead drinking pee, even if it is in the Pacific Ocean. And then he talks about how Richard Parker is going to be his thing of survival. And then chapter 59, he talks about how the waves and his lifeboat, not the lifeboat, the raft, sort of anchors himself against the waves, which changes the direction of the boat, and it's actually making Richard Parker sick. And this, you'll see later, becomes like very important. And then he says he can smell urine by Richard Parker underneath the tarpaulin, and that's a territorial sign, so cats do that when they're territorial. So he was like, okay, well, that's a relief because he's only marked his territory underneath the tarpaulin. Then he talks about the solar still that he sees, and then he says, like, once he set them up and all that. Okay, then he talks about, sorry about that, I keep getting disrupted. Then he says how he sees so many fish on the life raft while he's on the raft, and how he only thought that the Pacific Ocean was very boring and that there were only dolphins. But then he says it's kind of like if you drive by a jungle in a car, you won't see anything. You got to walk slowly. And then he says it's the same with fish. You got to like walk in the Pacific Ocean. Well, you got to go through it at a walking pace. And he says, so to speak, So basically it's just saying it's something you'll never see if you're just on a boat. You got to like be very slow and to notice these things. And then chapter 60, he wakes up, he says how his situation is insignificant, and then he says, hold on, it's actually not. then he like has a will to live again, then he prays, and then he goes back to sleep. And that is all so far. I'll do another video soon, and I hope this helps. If it does, let me know. If it doesn't, let me know what I could do to change it or help better. But thank you very much.